Hi everyone, and welcome to this course on React Native for beginners. So, the process of producing software apps used on mobile devices such as smartphones, tablets, or smartwatches is referred to as app development. And that's the topic of our first lecture. So when we say app development, when we talk about it, this includes creating, writing, testing, and deploying software apps onto platforms like iOS and Android. App development is divided into two types, native and cross-platform. Native app development entails designing programs that are built particularly for a certain operating system, example iOS or Android, and developed in a programming language that is native to that platform. Cross-platform app development entails designing programs that can be used on numerous platforms and are created in a programming language that is platform agnostic. An agnostic type of software is free from any ties to a specific platform or system and runs equally well across more than one platform. The app development process normally includes various stages such as brainstorming, wireframing, designing, programming, testing, and deployment. The developers collaborate to produce an app that satisfies the demands of the user and provides an amazing user experience. App development aims to build a project that is helpful, entertaining, and simple to use. The app development process might vary based on the project's particular requirements, the target audience, and the intended platform. The following are some important phases in the app development process. Number 1, ideation. This is the first step of app development. It's like the first stage in which the app's concept is developed. This entails conducting market research, recognizing user needs, and discussing workable solutions. Number 2, wireframing. That's like the second step. So it's a preliminary sketch or blueprint of the app's layout, and the user interface is generated during this stage. This aids in determining the operation and flow of the program. Then we have designing. When the wireframes have been approved, the design team produces a visually beautiful and user-friendly interface for the app. The interface must be easy to understand and manipulate. Next, we have development. This is the stage at which the software is properly coded and developed. The app's features and functionality are built by the developers using programming languages, software, and tools. Then we have testing. When the app is created, it's put through a series of tests to ensure that it's functional and free of faults or problems. Then we have deployment. After having been properly tested, the program is uploaded to the App Store for consumers to download and use. App creation also includes constant maintenance and upgrades to preserve the app's functionality, security, and compatibility with the most recent operating systems and devices. Target audience, app functionality, user experience, security, and scalability are all important factors to consider while designing an app. It's also critical to comprehend the App Store's criteria and regulations to accept the app for distribution. Ultimately, app development is a complicated process that necessitates the collaboration of qualified developers, designers, and testers in order to produce a successful product that satisfies the demands of the intended audience. Alright, so that's it for this introductory lecture, and now on to the next one. Hello and welcome to this new lecture. In this video we'll be looking into what web development is. Web development, on the other hand, involves creating websites and web applications that run on web browsers. Websites can be accessed on various devices, including desktops, laptops, tablets, and smartphones. Unlike most apps, websites require an internet connection to operate. There are two main types of websites, namely static and dynamic websites. Static websites are made up of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and do not have a database. Dynamic websites, on the other hand, are more complex and have a database. They are built using programming languages, among others, PHP, Ruby on Rails, and Python. A website's development process involves several stages, including planning, designing, coding, testing, and deployment. Web developers need to be proficient in programming languages such as HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and various frameworks such as React, Angular, and Vue. Okay, so that's it for the introduction of web development. Then let's tackle now the difference between app development and web development. So let's take a look at the big difference between both of them. So between apps and websites, basically. Okay, so first difference, platforms. App development involves creating applications that run on specific platforms, such as iOS or Android. Web development, on the other hand, involves creating websites that can be accessed on any device with a web browser. Number two, the second difference, online versus offline. Apps can operate offline, without an internet connection. In contrast, websites require an internet connection to operate. Okay, so the next difference is user experience. The primary goal of app development is to provide users with a native experience that is tailored to the specific device. Web development focuses on creating a seamless user experience across different devices. Next, programming languages. App development requires different programming languages such as Java, Swift, and Kotlin, while web development requires languages such as HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Next, development tools. App development requires specific development tools such as Xcode for iOS app development, while web development uses tools such as Visual Studio Code, Sublime Text, or Atom. Next, deployment. Apps are deployed through app stores such as Apple's App Store or Google Play, while websites are deployed to web servers. Alright, so in conclusion, app development and web development are two distinct software development areas with unique features. The primary difference between the two is that app development involves creating applications that run natively on specific platforms, while web development involves creating websites that can be accessed on any device with a web browser. Understanding the difference between the two can help developers choose the right development path depending on their project requirements. Okay, so that's it for this lecture, and now on to the next one. Hello and welcome to this new lecture in which we'll see what is React Native and why it is in demand. Okay, so React Native is a framework used in the development of mobile applications that was created by Facebook. It enables developers to build mobile applications using JavaScript and React, which are popular web development technologies. React Native was released in 2015, and since then, it has become one of the most popular frameworks for building mobile applications. Okay, so React Native works by using a virtual DOM, document object model, to create a hierarchy of UI components that are rendered on the screen. The virtual DOM is a lightweight representation of the actual DOM, which makes it faster to update and render UI components. Okay, so React Native allows developers to write code once and reuse it across multiple platforms, including iOS and Android. This is because the framework uses native components, which are platform-specific UI elements. This is because the framework uses native components, which are platform-specific UI elements that are optimized for each platform. React Native produces a set of pre-built UI components that are customizable and can be used to create complex UI elements. One of the main advantages of React Native is that it allows developers to use their existing web development skills to build mobile applications. And this basically means that developers do not need to learn new programming languages or tools to build mobile applications, which can save a huge time and reduce the learning curve. React Native also has a large and active community of developers, which means that developers can find answers to their questions and get help when they need it through React Native's network. The framework has many third-party libraries and plugins which can be used to extend its functionality and add new features to applications. In conclusion, React Native is a framework for developing mobile applications that uses JavaScript and React, which are popular web development technologies. So it allows developers to build mobile applications using a single code base that can be used across multiple platforms, including iOS and Android. And yeah, so basically React Native is fast, efficient, and has a large community of developers, which makes it excellent for building mobile applications. So it is really like an excellent choice for mobile applications development. Okay, so now let's get into the demand. React Native is a popular framework for app development that is in high demand for several reasons. Here are some of the key reasons why React Native is so popular. Cross-platform compatibility. Okay, so with React Native, developers can design apps that function on both iOS and Android platforms using the same code base. This makes it a cost-effective and efficient solution for organizations and developers interested in developing apps available across numerous platforms. The second bullet point is React Native's component-based design and hot reloading functionality that allows developers to observe changes to the app in real time without having to compile the code. This aids in the development process by shortening the time and effort necessary to design and test apps. Strong community support. React Native has a huge and active developer community that contributes to the framework's growth and enhancement. This implies that developers have a plethora of resources, frameworks, and tools at their disposal, making it easier to design high-quality programs. Then we have high performance. React Native is well known for its high performance characteristics, which allow apps to load rapidly and function smoothly on older devices. It also uses native components, which provide programmers a more natural appearance and feel, making the software more intuitive and user-friendly. And then we have the cost effectiveness. Since React Native enables developers to create cross-platform apps from a single code base, it drastically cuts development costs and time to market, making it an appealing alternative for startups and small enterprises. Then we have reusable components. React Native enables developers to construct reusable components that may be reused throughout the project. This saves developers time and effort because they don't have to design the same components from scratch over and over again. Then we have the fact that it's easy to learn. React Native is simple to understand since it's built on top of React, a famous JavaScript package. This implies that React developers can rapidly learn React Native and begin designing mobile apps. Then we have the fact that it has a huge developer pool. Because React Native has a vast pool of developers that are knowledgeable about the framework, businesses and organizations can quickly locate and recruit developers to work on their app development projects. Okay, then we have the supports of third-party libraries. A third-party library provides the native app features which are not available in React Native features. As React Native supports third-party libraries, this allows developers to rapidly and easily add extra functionality to their projects. Then we have the scalability. Since React Native is extremely scalable, it can be used to create apps of any sizes, from simple apps to massive complicated applications. Then we have the fact that it's open source. Because React Native is an open source framework, developers can use it for free while also contributing to its development. So yeah, it's like used for free. This also implies that there are a plethora of information and tools for developers to use and learn from. Alright, so that's it for this lecture, and now on to the next one, in which we'll explore some of the alternatives to React Native. So let's move on. Hello and welcome to this new lecture on React Native alternatives. While React Native is a popular choice for building mobile applications, there are several alternatives available to developers. Some of the popular alternatives to React Native include: number one, Flutter. So Flutter is basically an open source mobile application development framework created by Google. It uses the Dart programming language and allows developers to build high performance, visually attractive mobile applications that run on both Android and iOS. Okay, number two, Xamarin. So Xamarin is a mobile application development platform that allows developers to build native mobile applications using C# and .NET. It enables developers to write code once and use it across multiple platforms, including iOS, Android, and Windows. Then we have Ionic. Ionic is an open source framework to build hybrid mobile applications using web technologies such as HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It enables developers to build mobile applications that run on both iOS and Android. Then we have Native Script, which is an open source mobile application development framework that allows developers to build native mobile applications using JavaScript and TypeScript. It enables developers to write code once and use it across multiple platforms, including iOS and Android. Each of these frameworks has its own strengths and weaknesses, and developers should carefully evaluate their requirements and goals before choosing a framework. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this lecture on React Native alternatives, and now on to the next one. Hello and welcome to this new lecture on Expo CLI and React Native. Expo CLI and React Native CLI are both command line interfaces that are used to develop React Native applications. However, there are some key differences between the two. Expo CLI is a tool chain built around React Native that provides a simplified and streamlined workflow to develop React Native applications. It includes a set of pre-built components and APIs that you can use to build your application without having to write any native code. Expo CLI also provides a development server that you can use to preview your app during development, as well as tools for building and publishing your app to different app stores. Okay, and now on to React Native CLI. So what's the difference? So React Native CLI, on the other hand, is the official command line interface for React Native. It provides a more traditional development workflow in which you create your own project structure and write all the code yourself, including any native code that your app requires. React Native CLI also provides tools for building and deploying your app to app stores, but these tools require more configuration and setup compared to Expo CLI. Alright, so in summary, Expo CLI provides a simpler and more streamlined development workflow for React Native applications, while React Native CLI provides more flexibility and control over your project structure and code. The choice between the two depends on your specific needs and preferences as a developer. Alright, so let's review the React Native website briefly and move on to the next lecture. Hello and welcome to this new lecture on the necessary installations that we have to do before getting our hands dirty. Alright, so let's now begin the installations that are required to function with React Native. The necessary installations will be covered in this lecture, whether you already have them all installed or if you are brand new to this field, you can still follow this lecture to just, jog your memory if you want. Okay, open any browser, type VS Code into the search bar and click on the first result. You can write or edit the code in any programming language using the Visual Studio Code. So you need a code editor for this because the course is related to React Native. And VS Code is a popular sort of code editor among the many available. Hence, add Visual Studio Code to your operating system. It works with Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. So download the VS Code for Windows operating system because that's what I'm using currently. But if you have a different OS, then you can install the corresponding one. So yeah, since I have Windows, I install Windows, then install Node.js in your operating system after installing VS Code. And when you open the Node.js file, you'll see two different versions of Node, LTS and current. Installing the LTS version is required. Do not install the current version, so we do not want that. Installing the current version would be a mistake because it's still being reworked by the developers, who will convert it into the LTS version once their revisions are complete. So install LTS, which is recommended for most users because it's error-free and bug-free. The file will be produced in your operating system when you download Node. So install Node in your operating system at this point. Click the next button to open the file, then to accept the agreement. Then you can select the path and you proceed further. Okay, once more click on the next button and then finally click the install button to begin the installation. Go to the command prompt after the installation is finished by pressing Windows plus R. Use the command node-v to check the version of the node as soon as CMD opens. Use the npm-v command to verify whether npm is installed or not. If it is, the command will then verify the installed version of the software. Execute these two commands to see if your operating system has these programs installed or not. Node version 18.14.2 and npm function 9.5.0 are installed in the operating system, as you can see in CMD, so that's exactly what we see. One thing to keep in mind is that LTS stands for long-term support version. On the Node.js website, you can also view the release schedule for the most recent version. You can begin working on React Native once you've finished these installations. You may encounter numerous problems when installing React Native if these installations are not finished. So in the next lecture, we'll cover how to install React Native in Visual Studio Code. That's exactly what we'll see next, so let's move on. Hello and welcome to this new lecture on setting up our first app. So today we'll start by creating a folder connected to the React app, then open it in the React app. Okay, now that the terminal is open, the context will be displayed, so first clear it. You'll need to perform a command from the React Native website in the terminal after clearing the context. In order to get started, go to the React Native website and click the Get Started button. This will take you to a new page with two options: Expo Go Quick Start and React Native CLI Quick Start. Installing numerous other programs and downloading Android Studio are all required steps in the setup of the CLI. The characteristics of your machine affect how CLI is installed as well. Since there are many commands you need to install to use CLI, if your operating system does not meet the criteria, it might hang. CLI can be substituted with Expo Go Quick Start. Expo Go is essentially an application that allows you to scan a barcode and instantly launch a website. npm and yarn are available options in the Expo Go Quick Start, and you can utilize either one of them. For now, we'll use npm. A novice may encounter problems in this version when installing the most recent version of Expo. Follow the instructions on the React Native page if you're lost. So for those of you that might run across problems, we'll explain how to fix them later on. Now go to version 0.68 and replicate the npm command first to avoid errors. Enter the npm command into the terminal. When you press the enter key, the installation will begin. Once it's finished, paste the next instruction. Go to the React Native website to paste the next command into the console. Copy the npm command and paste it into the terminal after opening the version 0.71. Instead of a fantastic project, so enter the name of your project in this command. Run the command and for the time being enter my app as the project name. Repeat the command after it has completed successfully. You should now see that the project titled My App has been created. Assets and node modules are set up in My Apps folder. This project also has the main files app.js, app.json, and package.json installed. Visit the React Native website once more and copy the most recent command. So in this case, it's npx expo start. Next, go to the terminal. Choose the My App project before pasting the copied command. Use the clean command once the app has been chosen. The command npx expo start should be pasted after running the clean command. The error stating npm is not installed, so it will appear when you run the command, and now is a good time to install npm to fix this problem. Alright, so run the clear command once npm has been installed. You should now see that the error has been fixed and the project started running after you used the npx expo start command once you'd cleared the terminal. When the installation is finished, the terminal will display a QR code. So the terminal also provides several commands. When you press it, a Google Android will open. Okay. The web will open when you press the letter W. The debugger will launch when you press the J key. The program will be reloaded when you press the R key. The M key will open the toggle. When should you press each key? So basically the terminal will display all the commands once more. The QR code scanning instructions state that you should use the Expo Go app on Android or the camera app on iOS, depending on your device. Alright, so installing the Expo Go app on Android phone will allow you to scan QR codes. The local deployment servers will start using the command npx expo start. As you can see when you open the Expo Go app, you now have two options to open applications. Manually typing in the application's URL, which is typically provided in the terminal, or scanning a QR code. So the camera will be launched when you click on choose QR code and open in mobile. Now use your phone's camera to scan the QR code. So the message open up app.js to start working on your app will appear in the Android app after a little delay following the QR code scan. If you select the hot pink color and save the file, the backdrop of the Android program will change to the hot pink color, allowing us to select any color we like. Let's check out the files that the My App project has now. You can notice that icons are present in the assets folder if you open it. When the application was launched, these icons were generated. If you've studied React.js, you should be familiar with node modules. So basically, the files in the node modules folder form the core of the entire project. A primary file is called app.js. The information about the node modules folder is provided in the git ignore file, which is not crucial. Okay, app.json is the next file. This file contains information about the project's name, version of the native React app, orientation icons, etc. Alright, so in the app.json file, information about Android, iOS, and the web is also included. There is also a babel.config.js file in the my app project. After that comes package.lock.json. This file contains a list of all the available dependencies. Package.json is the final file. This file stores dependencies for Expo, Expo status bar, React, React Native, and other files. Each npm module you install will be added to the package.json file's dependencies. Hence, this is to understand how to work with a specific application. When you open the app.js file, the overview of the import, status bar, and style sheet may be confusing. So we'll explain each item individually further on. You will benefit from having prior web development knowledge, since you'll be able to understand React Native much more quickly. But if you have no prior experience with web development and only want to study app development, then no worries. All fundamental ideas required for React Native will be tackled and covered in detail in subsequent lectures. So no worries at all. We'll cover all of them one by one. But for now, that's pretty much it for this lecture. So let's move on to the next one. Hello and welcome to this new lecture on core components. In this lecture, we'll cover a simple technique to create manually the entire structure of our app.js file. This lecture is intended for those who are unfamiliar with React, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Also, several fundamental JavaScript ideas will be explained. So basically, these lectures are optional. And of course, if you're familiar with React, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, then you can skip them. Alright, so let's first clarify what import means and where the data is loaded into the app.js file. Import signifies that the library has been installed, as well as everything else, status bar, style sheet, etc. The installed library is used to import all text, views, and other data. When you examine the package.json file, you can see that the React and React Native dependencies have been installed. When you install a dependent, all the files related to that dependency are also placed in the package.json file, just as all the files related to node modules are stored in the node modules file. Thus, whenever you wish to install something in a file that is related to a library that's installed, you must import it into the file first. If you remove the style sheet from the import and save the file, you can see that the app.js file's style sheet is now imported from the React Native library. The program will encounter an error because the property style sheet is missing. Therefore, if you wish to use anything connected to libraries, you must import a library. Flex, color, background color, alignments, and other styling elements are used in style sheets. Now, if you go back and undo the style sheet import, remove the content, save the file, then open the application, an issue will occur once more. To fix that, import text and save the file. The error will be fixed automatically. So the key thing here is that you must import a library. If you wish to use anything library related, just go to the React Native website now, then open the native and core components. And if you're new to React Native, you wouldn't know anything about the interface, but if you're familiar with web development, you'll notice that these concepts are related. Okay, so the following 5 components need to be used if you wish to work with React Native: view, text, image, scroll view, text input. Accessibility controls, style, flexbox layout, and some touch handlings are all supported by the container known as view. It denotes that container is the view tag used in app.js. You should see that blue is used in styles, yet it's not working since blue cannot be applied to a container. The text will be colored blue. Hence, the view component comes first. You can add any element that's contained in a container to this component. Use a text element or component if you wish to contribute something in text format. Text component displays text styling, text nesting, and touch event handling. Okay, so use the image component if you wish to add one picture or a variety of images to your application. Alright, so use the scroll view element to add the scroll function to your application. The scroll view tag is a scrolling container that can hold a variety of views and components. You can add a text input component while adding text to a text input form. Users can enter text using text input. If you have additional app development frameworks or programming languages installed, such as Flutter, which is frequently used in opposition to Respond Native. So in Flutter, you'll have to use the view group component instead of the view component while working on Android. And you have to use the UI view instead of view when working on iOS. But one advantage of React Native is that you can use the view component when creating apps for both Android and iOS. Okay, again, in Flutter, when there is a text component on Android, you must use the text view component instead of the text component. And on iOS, you must use the UI text view component instead of the text component. But another advantage of React Native is that you can use the text component for both the creation of Android and iOS apps. So if you want to use an image component in an Android or iOS application, the same principle will be used. They also used examples here to clarify this concept. However, you'll be given a step-by-step explanation of it in a following lecture, as the goal of this current one is to give you just an overview of all the components that will be used in React Native. Okay. So if all the components were presented realistically, then this lecture would be very long. It's like the goal is just, to give you a quick overview about the essential ones. And, in the following lecture, we'll explain how these components actually work in detail. But for now, that's pretty much it. So let's move on. Hello and welcome to this new lecture on file structure. If you examine the app.js file, you can see that a default structure has been set up. However, annotate the entire structure right away by pressing Ctrl A. The issue at hand is the following. So what is a comment? So when code is hidden by a comment, it signifies that although you intend to use the code in the future, you want it to remain hidden for the time being because its function is unaffected. The code can also be commented by holding down Ctrl and the # key. Any structure or code that you comment won't function in the browser. To illustrate that, if you comment the entire structure in the app.js file, you save the file and then open the browser, the screen will be blank because the code has been commented and will no longer function. Due to React Native's inability to render any methods, you can also encounter a render error. Now that the app.js file is open, let's manually design a structure. To achieve this, first import libraries, then create components, apply styling, and finally export the component. Okay, presently import the React libraries first. The code will be automatically finished when you write import React and click save. Import the items you want to add after this. Next, we'll take a look at how to use the React Native library to import text and style sheets. Thanks to the installation of npm, all other library options are also accessible. Libraries are now being imported. Okay, now go to the components section first, create a function called app, then use a callback function. Use text tags to return text MetaBrains in the callback function. The styling section is now available. Declare a variable styles with style sheet. Created refers to the necessity to create the style in style sheet. Okay, then name the class you just created in the next tag and use it for styling. Click on text tag write style now. And after writing the library name, for example, styles, that was just added, take a class text, go to the const styles function and select text. All the properties that were introduced to the function are now working with text and rendering and appearing in the application. Now let's make the function red, okay? After that, export the app you just made. Export the default app, then save the document. Go to the application now and you'll see that MetaBrains is printed in red. After you save the file and open the program, you'll be able to see that once you've added the background color property to the styles function, MetaBrains is printed in red against a gray background. You can also choose a height and perform alignments. So save the file with a 500 height for the time being. Due to an alignment problem, MetaBrains is still printed on the top bar. Add the center option to align the items property in the styles function. After that, add the justify content attribute to the styles function and select center again. The problem is still present and MetaBrains is still printed on the top bar if you save the file right now. The flex property must be used to resolve this problem. So save the file after adding flex, :1. The problem has not been solved yet. Because text is used in this situation and text can only be used to write text, you need to create a container to address the problem. So when creating a container, you must specify the class of the container and the class of the text separately before you can use the container and text appropriately. Therefore, the primary goal of this lecture is to investigate how to manually design a structure. Every time you create a function and need to specify the file name, you should use capital letters. After this lesson, we'll learn how to add styling and other components in the next lecture. So let's move on. Hello and welcome to this new part of the course on components. In this presentation, we'll cover what are components, why do we use them, and what advantages do they offer in React Native. If you've previously studied React and you're familiar with the language, it won't take you long to understand why you should develop components. You need to use React components if you wish to combine numerous files into a single file and show the file in an application. The page with the text MetaBrains is created in this application, so it's created like in the application as you can see on the screen. You can therefore claim that it's a screen. Now, you must break screens into distinct sections if you want to build a login screen and a sign-up page, because you cannot keep all individual screens on a single screen. So different roles will be played on each screen. The user will be taken to that screen when they click on any of the screens. So, you will be taken to the screen when you click on it. This is the main reason as to why you should develop components. You can see in the application that the MetaBrains screen appears. Now, you won't style the login form within styling of the MetaBrains page in the app.js file if you want to construct a login form screen, because the file will get too big. So you have the option of employing components to keep the files straightforward and compact. Alright, so create a folder with the name screen first. Now make a login.js file in the screen folder. JSX is also an option here, so duplicate the entire structure or data in the login.js file and paste it there. Now, if you save the file, the application will report the same result because the data has not updated after modifications yet. Next, you'll want to change the text tag from MetaBrains to login form. Make sure you also change the function name from app to login. At the bottom of the page, export login implies that the code will repeat itself. Currently, only the gray background color is used in the styles feature. Red was also selected for the text, but it's not working. So we'll discuss this later on why the color red is malfunctioning. The login form has now been generated. The distinct component with the name screen is currently being constructed. Now import this component into the app.js component. Alright, now if you type import, the suggestion to login will appear. When you click on the suggestion to login, import will receive the path and the path will be filled automatically. Use the login text element. So login / arrow below and save the file to see the login form printed beneath the application's MetaBrains. All screens will now be produced under the folder screen. This folder can have any name you choose. Currently, this folder is known as screen because most of the work is done on mobile, where the word screen is frequently used because you frequently go between screens like the sign up screen, login screen, contact us screen, etc. Now let's create the sign up screen in the screen folder. Make a signup.js file, copy the whole structure of the signup.js file and paste it there. Remove the login form from the text tag in the signup.js file and replace it with a signup form. Remove the function name and replace it with the function name signup. So signup is also exported below. Go to the app.js file now and import the signup component. Add signup. Now beneath login, then save the file. You should notice that MetaBrains signup and login forms are now printed in the browser. Next, let's talk about why red is not used in MetaMinds. So the styling is applied to the view element, and it was already covered in introductory new lectures that you should always use the view element as a container. Therefore, the styling only applies to the view element and not to the text element. So you must style text separately if you wish to apply color to it. Okay, in the view tag, the add style feature is equivalent to styles.container. The add style feature in a text tag is equivalent to style.text and includes container in the styles function as well. Next, duplicate the style function. Take away all other characteristics except for color. Select thread and mention text in the function. If you save the file right now, you'll notice that the word MetaBrains is printed on the application screen in red. Go to the login.js file to see how the text is styled. Call style is equal to styles.text now, and in the function, select the color green. Apply the same process now to the signup.js file and select the hot pink color in the styles function. Now that the file has been saved, you can see that the application is displaying all the chosen colors. We'll take the time later on to discuss how to apply effects to application printed components. Currently, a simple application has been developed in which 3 different individual components are imported into a single global component and given various colorings. The fundamental JavaScript ideas that are required to operate with React Native will be covered in the following lecture. You cannot understand what const, function, styles, etc. are if you don't know anything about JavaScript. However, if you are familiar with the fundamentals of JavaScript, you will be able to skip those lectures. Alright, so let's move on. Hello and welcome to this next part of our course on React Native. The fundamental JavaScript ideas that you must master before being able to work with React Native will be covered in this session. For instance, you need to understand what variables, loops, statements, and functions in React Native are. Additionally, we'll explain how to call these items in an application. For the time being, remove MetaBrains, login, and sign. First, let's talk about variables. So var, let, and const are the three primary notions of variables. Const variables are used extensively across all computer languages. So let's first talk about var. For this example, name the variable a and give it a value of 20. One could ask what are var, a, and 20 in this code. Var stands for variable type, a stands for variable name or declaration, and 20 for a's value. Values include null, strings, booleans, arrays, objects, and numbers. These are the primary items that can be given to a variable value. Any value enclosed in inverted commas is referred to as string. So it's referred to as a string. When digits are used instead of inverted commas, the term number is used. So you shouldn't use inverted commas if you wish to use a number as the value of a variable. Currently, variable a's assigned value is 20. How should the value 20 be called now? So go to the text tag in the app.js file, input a in the call, and use curly brackets. The value 20 will now be printed in the application if you save the file. Now, if you set the value 30 to a and save the file, 30 will be printed in the program since var allows you to use the same variable multiple times or assign multiple values to the same variable. In the application, the most recent declared value ought to be printed. So let's move on to the let idea now. Declare the variable let b for this example, give it the value 50, then move on to the next tag, enclose the variable in curly brackets, and save the file. Now 50 applications will be printed if you save the file. Okay, now if you alter the value of b, for example, give it a value of 60 and save the file, 60 will be printed in the application. However, if you declare the variable let b again, give it a value of 60 and save the file, nothing will be printed in the application and an error will occur. For instance, if you declare variable var a once again, give it a value of 40 and then save the file, nothing will go wrong and 40 will be printed out in the application. It means that you can declare and change variables more than once in a var variable, but you cannot declare variables more than once in a let variable without running into an error. Let's proceed to the final stage, which involves the const variable. So declare the variable const c and give it the value 100 for this example. The value 100 will be printed in the application. If you navigate to the text tag and use curly brackets to call variable c, you cannot declare a variable more than once or alter the value more than once under the const concept. If you modify the value of c again after that, an error will occur. Okay, so it implies that the value of c can only be added once. Alright, next, add the number 500 to another variable you just declared, so const d. Both 100 and 500 will be printed in the browser when you use curly brackets in the text tag. Call the variable d and save the file. It means that you cannot declare a variable in a const variable more than once and then alter its value. These are the fundamental ideas pertaining to variables. Let and const variables will be used the most. Var isn't typically used. Const is frequently used because if a developer accidentally declares a variable with the same value numerous times, he or she should receive an error and be made aware of the problem. Thus, These were the fundamental ideas relating to JavaScript, so functions will be covered in the following lecture. Let's move on. Hello and welcome to this new lecture on data types. The concept of variables was covered in the last lecture. After discussing variables, this new lecture will now explore data types. There are numerous types of data types, each of which will be covered individually. The first data type is a string. String data type refers to any declaration of a variable and any statement enclosed in an inverted comma. For instance, you use the text hello world after declaring the variable a. The statement now has two options for printing. One approach is to type the statement directly into the document you want to print it on. You can also use console.log to call the variable instead of using the console command. You can now print the statement twice. One is a browser where the JavaScript engine has all the data installed. Now open the browser and press F12 or choose Inspect from the context menu of the right-click button. The console will appear when you select the F12 or Inspect option. No data will appear in the console for the time being. Go to VS Code, copy the file location, and then paste it into the browser to display data in the console. Because you need to create a file in JavaScript to import or add data. All data is printed in the browser. Leave it for the time being and launch the terminal console. Run node index.js from the terminal now. You must install Node on your operating system for it to function. So let's return to the string. The string code is as follows. var a equals hello world, console.log a. Run node index.js in the terminal now, and hello world will appear. Alright, so next is the Boolean data type. A Boolean consists of two statements. One is true and the other is false. You should use the Boolean data type whenever you wish to print a true or false assertion. Declare two variables, for instance c and x, and run the console as follows. var c equals true, var x equals false, console.log c. Now if you open a terminal window and type node index.js, true will be displayed. Now, if you run node index.js in the terminal and type console.log x, false will be displayed. If you don't already have a foundational understanding of JavaScript, the basics we are studying today will be very helpful for the next lectures of this new lecture. Okay, now on to null data types. Null is the next data type, and when you use null, the terminal will display a value of 0. A case in point, var y equals null, console.log y. Go to the terminal now and type node index. The terminal will display null in JavaScript. There are numerous additional little data types, and we'll talk about them whenever they come up in a project. So far we've described the data types for strings, numbers, booleans, and null. After looking into data types, we need to address the notions of array and objects. So let's simply explain them now. Let's talk about arrays now. Okay, so let's declare a variable for this purpose, then add some random names to the array. A large amount of data can be displayed in a single variable using an array. This procedure's code is as follows. var z equals square brackets Joe, Carlos, Brandon, console.log z. Now if you go to the terminal and run node index.js, names along with array Joe, Carlos, Brandon will be printed in the terminal. You can also print array which includes numbers like as follows. var z equals Joe, 20, Carlos, console.log. Now if you go to the terminal and run node index.js array, Joe, 20, Carlos will be printed in the terminal. So by using these methods, you can print array. You can print an array by doing that. The following concept has to do with objects. To further grasp this idea, let's define a variable a and then write an example using curly brackets. Alright, for example, let's write name Carlos, age 20, and a random email address. Keep in mind that strings should only be written in strings, otherwise errors can appear. In the console, call this variable a now. So this procedure's code is as follows. var a equals, curly brackets, name colon Carlos, comma, age colon 20, email colon abc@gmail.com, close curly brackets, console.log a. Now launch node index.js in the terminal. The entire object will be printed in the terminal. Hence, these are some JavaScript fundamentals that you should be familiar with since they will be mentioned in upcoming lectures. Okay, so that's pretty much it for now. Let's move on to the next lecture. Hello and welcome to this new lecture on operators. After data types, the next concept is operators. The following are the many types of operators. Number 1, arithmetic operators. Number 2, assignment operators. Number 3, logical operators. Number 4, comparison operators. Number 5, conditional operators. Number 6, type operators. Each operator will be discussed individually in this presentation. Okay, now declare a variable with the name x, and to begin, give it the value 15. Use the assignment operator now. Declare a second variable with the name y and the value of 20 in order to employ arithmetic operators. Next, define a new variable with the name z, and then use the arithmetic operator to combine x and y. Write x plus y to add variables. The plus symbol is an arithmetic operator. Do console.log now, z. This procedure's code is as follows. Let x equals 15, var y equals 20, const z equals x plus y, console.log z. Now, launch node index from the terminal. Thereafter, JS will print the result 35 in the terminal. Use the star arithmetic operator now and write x star y instead of x plus y to multiply the variables x and y. Return to the terminal now and then run node index. The output of the 300-fold multiplication in JS is displayed on the terminal. According to your personal preferences, you can perform additions, subtractions, multiplications, and divisions. Moreover, you can set reminders when using arithmetic operators. You can also use arithmetic equations, which work as follows. Let x equals 15, var y equals 20, const z equals parenthesis 50 plus 50 star x, console.log z. You should read this code as add 50 into 50, and then multiply the answer with 15, and print the final result in the terminal. Now, if you go to the terminal and run node index.js, the result 1500 will be displayed in the terminal. Now let's use the assignment operator. For this example, declare a variable x and assign a 20 value to it. After this, write x plus equals 5 and then do console.log x. The code for this procedure is as follows. X plus equals 5, console.log x. The code reads as multiply x by 20 and then add 5 to it. Now launch node index from the terminal. The number 25 will be printed in the terminal by JS. You should only perform additions with the assignment operator. You can perform additions, subtractions, multiplications, divisions, and other operations as needed. Let's move on to the comparison operator, which allows you to compare two assertions against one another. To compare, data types and values must be equal. So there are three comparison operator signs: greater than, less than, and equal to. Let's declare two variables, x and y, with values of 30 and 40 respectively, so that you can grasp this idea. Start by console, use the equals sign, so x equals y to check whether a statement is true or false. This procedure's code is as follows. Var x equals 30, var y equals 40, console.log, parenthesis, x equal y. Now launch node index from the terminal. Because 30 and 40 are not equal to one another, the outcome of the JS code will be false in the terminal. Okay, now because 40 and 40 are equivalent to one another, the answer yes will be written in the terminal if the value of x and y are 40 and 40, respectively. Now, if you use a string in a single statement and use 3 equal signs, as in the example below, so var x equals 40, var y equals 40, console.log x equal y. Now the code's triple equal symbol means to check the statement and the data type. Now because the data types of the x and y variables are different, false will be written in the terminal when you run node index.js. Here is how the equal to and equal operators are used. Okay, let's move on to the not equal to operator. An exclamation mark is used in the following code. So var x equals 30, var y equals 40, console.log, parenthesis, x, exclamation mark equals y. Now, if you open a terminal window and type node index.js, the contrary result, true, will be displayed instead of expected false. So instead of the expected false that we were looking to, we get true because of the exclamation mark. So the result false will be printed due to the fact that we used the exclamation mark in the event when the values of the x and y variables are equal to one another. In not equal to operators like equal to and equal type operators, you can check data types as well as statements. Okay, so the exclamation mark is the only distinction between the operators equal to and not equal to. Let's now examine the less than and more than operators. Declare two variables and provide them values for this purpose. So the following console command, var x equals 40, var y equals 40, console.log, parenthesis, x greater than y. Now, if you open a terminal and type node index.js, the result will be printed as false because x and y are equal to one another. So x cannot be greater than y. Now, if you alter the code's condition as follows, var x equals 40, var y equals 40, console.log, parenthesis, x is equal to or greater than y. So x is now greater than or equal to y. So if you open a terminal and type node index.js, the result will be printed as true. Now, if you apply the condition x greater than y, and x is equal to 41, and y is equal to 40, the result will be true because 41 is greater than 40. Now, if you apply the condition x greater than y, and x is equal to 41, and y is equal to 40, the result will be true because 41 is greater than 40. These operators, less and greater than, can be used. Okay, so these were the techniques for employing various operators. In the following lesson, we'll describe what are if-else statements and how to construct them. But for now, that's pretty much it. So let's move on. Hello and welcome to our new lecture on React Native, in which we'll focus on the if-else statement. Okay, so if statements, else statements, and else-if statements will all be covered today. These three concepts are assertions. Let's look at how comparison operators are actually used in an if statement now that the concept has been presented in the last session. So let's now begin with the if-else sentence. To start, make a variable called x and give it the value of 5. Use an if statement now and set the condition to x greater than 3. Console x is greater now. the code looks like this: var x equals 5. If x greater than 3, curly brackets, console.log x is greater, close curly brackets. Now launch node index from the terminal. Because 5 is greater than 3, the result x is greater will be printed in the terminal by JS. So, if you type x greater than 6 in the condition field, nothing will be printed in the terminal, which proves that the if statement is false because 6 is not bigger than 5. Now that you've used the else statement, the if statement will print if the condition is true, but the else statement will print if the condition changes to be false. Also, use the console in the else statement and enter false. This false is a string rather than a data type. The Boolean data type will be printed if false is entered without inverted commas. So, the code of the if statement is as follows: var x equals 5, if x greater than 6, console.log x is greater, else console.log false. Now go to the terminal and run node index.js. The else statement false will be printed in the terminal because x is equal to 5 and 5 is not greater than 6. Now if you run the following code, var x equals 10, if x greater than 6, open curly brackets, console.log x is greater, else curly brackets, console.log false. Now that x equals 10 and 10 is greater than 6 as specified in the if condition, the if statement x is greater will be written. Also, you have the option of making several statements. So create a variable with the name student and give the student 50 marks for this example. Create several distinct circumstances and then test each one separately. 3 operators and, or, and not operators that were not previously addressed will now be employed in this situation. When compared, the and or operators are nearly identical, but the not operator is slightly different. The exclamation mark is not used with operators. So as opposed to the not operator, the and operator and or operator are used more frequently. A student variable is created and 50 marks are given to it. Use the operator student greater than or equal to 80 and student equals to 100 to create the if condition. Then type console.log a+. This procedure's code is as follows: var student equals 50, if brackets student greater than or equal to 80 and student less than or equal to 100, console.log brackets a+, else curly brackets console.log fail close curly brackets. Now go to the terminal and run node index.js. The result fail will be printed because the student's mark is 50 and 50 is not greater than 80. Now let's use else if statement, which is as follows: var student equals 95, if student greater than or equal to 80 and student less than or equal to 100, console.log brackets a+, else if student greater than or equal to 70 and student less than or equal to 80, console.log b+. The code means that if a student's grade is between 80 and 100, the student will be awarded an A+ grade and A+ will be printed in the terminal. And if their grade is between 70 and 80, the grade B+ will be printed. Now, launch node index from the terminal. The grade A+ will be printed in the terminal because the student's marks met the if condition. The second criteria will be met if you give the pupil 75 points. A B+ grade will then be displayed on the terminal. Now, let's create another if statement that prints C+ in the terminal if the student's grades are between 60 and 70. After that, create another if statement that says to print D+ in the terminal if the student's marks are between 50 and 60. Make another if-then statement that orders fail should be printed in the terminal if the student's grade is below 50. Finally, add an else sentence and execute console.log, so enter valid marks. The entire procedure's code is as follows: var student equals 75, if brackets student greater than or equal to 80, and then student less than or equal to 100, console.log a plus, else if student greater than or equal to 70, and student less than or equal to 80, console.log b plus, else if student greater than 60, and student less than or equal to 70, console.log c plus, else if student greater than or equal to 50, and student less than or equal to 60, console.log d plus, else if student less than 50, console.log fail, else console.log enter valid marks. Thus, this uses the AND operator. Now, if you open a terminal window and type node index.js, the grade B plus will be displayed because the student's score is 75, and 75 is between 70 and 80, which satisfies the requirements for a B plus grade. The OR operator is an additional operator. Okay, so the symbol for the OR operator is the straight bar. This sign can be used by hitting the shift button, which is located on the left side of the enter button. One of the statements in the OR operator must be true for the terminal to print anything else. Each condition in an operator will be examined individually. Okay, now, if you give the student 65 marks, the grade of C+ will print in the terminal. Now, if you give the student 55 marks, the grade of D+ will print in the terminal. And of course, the terminal will output fail if you give the student 45 marks. Therefore, you can check each condition one at a time this way. Now, if you give a student any invalid grades, the statement input valid marks will print in the terminal. Okay, so using this technique, you can use the if-else expression to run multiple functions. Alright, so that's pretty much it for this lecture, and now on to the next one. Hello and welcome to this new lecture on arrow functions. Today we'll talk about how to use functions and what an arrow function is. So without further ado, let's begin. Due to the extensive application of these two concepts in subsequent lectures, so these two major themes will be thoroughly discussed now. Alright, so to begin, declare a function, declare a variable, and then provide some random parameters to understand this notion. Create a new function now. Give it the name fun and add a few random parameters. Do so now using a few multiplication related arithmetic operators. The code looks like this. Let x equals fun brackets 2060 function fun ab return a multiplied by b. Close curly brackets. When you run this code, nothing will be displayed once you've typed node index.js into the terminal, since you need to use the console to print data or values. Thus, console now as follows: let x equals fun 2060 function fun ab return ab a star b console.log x. Now, if you save the code, 1200 will be printed in the terminal. But if you do an addition instead of a multiplication, like as follows: let x equals fun 2060 function fun brackets ab curly brackets return a plus b console.log brackets x. Now the result 80 will be printed in the terminal once you've saved the aforementioned code. That way we can call the function, and it depends on what kind of logic you're building. So I might do some calculations here, but I'll do the work for the basics, just to learn about the basics. So keep things simple for the time being. Let's now examine how to apply this idea to the arrow function. So compared to the normal function, the arrow function is quicker and more efficient. Let's create a variable called sum with the name let, give it the values a and b, and then use the arrow function to demonstrate how it works. Return a plus b now using the arrow function. Write the random numbers after doing console and calling the sum function. This procedure's code is as follows. Let sum equals a, b, forward arrow, return a plus b, console.log, brackets, sum 1020. Once you save the code and type console, node index.js in the terminal, the result 30 will be displayed. If the division symbol is used instead of the addition sign, the result displayed will be 0.5. So that was how to use the arrow function. As soon as React lectures begin, this topic will be discussed at an advanced level because it will be used extensively in React. So the basics of these notions are now evident for you. And that's it basically for this lecture. So let's move on to the next one. Hello and welcome to this new part of the course on the for each loop. In this lecture, we'll cover how to use loops with arrays. Simple loops are also an available option, but they are typically employed with objects and arrays. You must use loops with arrays because arrays are frequently used in React. For this demonstration, declare a new variable, let, and call it number, and then use an array of random integers. Use it first in a for loop. The syntax is automatically constructed when you use a for loop. All you need to do is enter usable values and adjust it as needed. Now write let I equals 0 and then mention that I less than number.length. When a dot is used between a number and a length, it implies that all array values length will be counted before any incrementation is carried out. Do console after that and call the variable. The code looks like this. Let num equals square brackets 3, 8, 7, 9, 10 for let I equals 0, I less than num.length, I plus plus, then curly brackets console.log num square brackets I. Now save the code and run node index.js. In the terminal, 3, 8, 7, 9, and 10 are printed. It means that the loop ran successfully. Now let's use the for each loop with the same array. Okay, so now write num for each and then use element. After this, do console. Each element will be multiplied by itself. The code is as follows. Let num equals square brackets 3, 8, 7, 9, 10. Num.for each ele, console.log ele multiplied by ele, console.log ele star ele, and then close all brackets. Now type console run node index.js into the terminal, and the result of all multiples of the elements 9, 64, 49, 81, and 100 will be displayed. Hence, this is the technique employed for each loop. So, for each loop, it's highly recommended since it's mostly used to iterate through a varied collection of elements. Its benefits include eliminating the potential of defects and improving code readability. It's called a for each loop because it iterates through each element individually. Okay, let's now look at how to turn a simple object into an array. In this example, let's first declare a variable, const a, with the name and give it the name Carlos. Create a new variable called arr, then write an array in it. From name, create an array, console log now. This procedure's code is as follows. Const name equals Carlos, let arr equals array.from name, console.log arr. Now, if you run node index.js in the terminal, the name Carlos will be printed in the terminal like follows in the array. So CARLOS in between like square brackets. It follows that you can easily turn a string into an array by using a variety of techniques. So these key ideas and topics have been covered here. You'll learn more about them in forthcoming lectures. These points will greatly assist you in understanding these concepts if you have no prior knowledge of JavaScript. It will be good for you to see these lectures. I mean, if you need to, like if you don't have any, fundamental knowledge about JavaScript, like if you have zero foundations, that I hope that they helped you to build some of, the foundation needed before diving deeper into React Native. So they are like an optional component that will aid in your understanding of the concepts to come. If you are already proficient in JavaScript, of course, as I already mentioned, you can skip these optional new lectures. Okay, so without further ado, let's move on to the next lecture. Hello and welcome to this new lecture on the different uses of map. Okay, so in this new lecture, we'll cover what maps are and why they are used in scripting. In essence, the map method creates an array from another array. Let's declare a variable with the name array and apply some random values to it to help us explore this notion. So do the array console now. The code looks like this. Let arr equals 20, 54, 10 between square brackets. Console.log arr. The result array 20, 54, 10 will be printed in the terminal after running node index.js. And once you've saved this code, each loop can also be used in this situation. For this, first construct an arr.map for each loop, and then use the callback function, then execute console.log value. After all of this, don't forget to press return. Otherwise, nothing will be printed in the terminal. 20, 54, and 10 are values. The code of the above procedure is as follows. So let arr equals square brackets 20, 54, 10, console.log arr.map, brackets value, console.log value, return value. The values 20, 54, and 10 will now be printed in the terminal once you've saved the code and executed node index.js from the console. If you want more values to be included, type +1 along with the return value. Now, if you want the result to be an array, you must declare a variable and use its console as shown below. Let arr equals square brackets 20, 54, 10, console.log arr, let b equals arr.map value, forward arrow, curly brackets, console.log value, return value +5, close all brackets, console.log b. Now, if you save and run this code, you will see that b is consoled and 5 values are being added in arrays. So that was a quick tutorial to explain how to use the map concept. In the next lecture, we'll explore the filter method. Alright, so let's move on. Hello and welcome to this next part of the course. As mentioned in the previous video, next we'll be learning about the filter method. The filter method does not alter the original array. Instead, it generates a new field in the array with the elements that pass the test supplied by the function. Okay, so the filter method does not execute the function of the empty elements. By using the filter technique, all you need to do is add the function. It will then be applied to the primary array and produce a new array after filtration. To demonstrate this, let's name a variable array and assign it some random values, create a new variable now called a, then call the existing array and apply the filter technique. The arrow function is compatible with the filter method. The return function a equals 10 follows this. It indicates that the result should print all array values that are less than or equal to 10. Execute console.log a now. Once you've done this, run node index.js in a terminal. Square brackets 569 will be printed in the terminal as a result because these 3 values are fulfilling the conditions of the filter method. The code of this procedure is as follows. Let array equals square brackets, 20, 5, 80, 100, 200, 69. Let a equals array.filter a. Return a less than or equal to 10. Console.log a. Now let's change the original condition and let a equals 100. The array 20, 5, 80, 100, 69 will now be printed in the terminal as a result of the updated filter method. To find certain items, you may also use the filter approach. Now, in the code we were using earlier, calling console.log array would cause all values provided in the array to be printed on the terminal. Alright, so that's it for this lecture, and now on to the next one. Hello and welcome to this new lecture on the reduce method. Okay, so finally, the reduction method is the most crucial array method. Since its name makes it plain, it will be used to reduce the values of an array. To reduce an array to one value, use the reduce method, assign some random digits to the array, 10, 20, 40, 50 for example. After that, for instance, declare a variable and name it a, declare a second variable with the name b, call the variable a now, then apply the reduce method to it. It can be cut down using the callback function. The initial value and the current value are the two arguments in the callback function. Return the starting value and the current value after this. As you can see, the array's initial value is 10 and its current value is 50. So do console.log b now. The code should look like this. Let a equals 10, 20, 4, 50 between square brackets. Let b equal a.reduce acc, cur. Return acc, console.log b. Now run node index.js in the terminal. The initial value 10 will be printed in the terminal as a result. If you want to add another initial value, you can add it in brackets outside of the array like this. Let a equals 10, 20, 4, 50. Let b equals a.reduce acc cur. Return acc. And then, okay, console.log. Now, if you run node index.js in the terminal, the new initial value 5 will be printed as a result in the terminal. You can also do an addition of the initial and current values like as follows. So let a equals 10, 20, 4, 50. Let b equals a.reduce acc cur. Return acc plus cur. Console.log b. Now if you run node index.js in the terminal, as a result 189 will be printed in the terminal. So the new initial value 5 is also included in this calculation. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this lecture, and now on to the next one. Hello and welcome to this next part of our course. So in this presentation we'll cover what template literals are and when to use them. Template strings and template literals are interchangeable terms. In JavaScript you are allowed to embed expressions with variables inside of strings. For this example, declare a variable with the name a. Use a string to write the name John now. Next, create a new variable and give it the name b. Apply template literals now. So, in these literals, type hi. Use the $sign now. Then say an in curly braces. So do console.log b last. Okay, so the code of this procedure is as follows. Let a equal John. Let b equal hello, comma, dollar, curly brackets, then a console.log b. Now, if you type node index.js into the terminal, John's name will be printed. So you may also use template literals and call variables in the console to achieve the same thing as shown below. So let a equals John, console.log hello, $a. You will achieve the same outcome if you run node index.js in a terminal now, which is greetings, comma, John. Let's look at an advanced type of idea for this reason. So create a variable called price and give it the value of 20. Declare a new variable now with the name rate and give it the value rate 0.3. One thing to keep in mind is that any form of variable can be used to generate a variable. It's not necessary to employ different types of variables. Okay, so create a new variable now called total price, then type total price using the template for literals. Use $2 signs for the dollar sign and the other for the following calculation. Total price is $, curly brackets, then brackets, price, star, 1 plus rate. After this, console.log brackets total price. The whole code of the procedure is as follows: const price equals 20, let rate equals 0.3, var total price equals the total price is $, square brackets, curly brackets, price, star, 1 plus rate. Okay, console.log, then brackets total price. The value, the total price is $26, will now be printed in the terminal if you run node index.js. When the code is run, the price constant 20 is multiplied by 1. The rate is then calculated by multiplying 20 by 0.3, and it's added to the price. So this is how template literals are used. Topics. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. And now on to the next lecture. Hello and welcome to this new lecture on JSX. In this lecture, we'll look into what JSX is and how it's used. JSX is a JavaScript-based XML format. A language a bit like HTML is XML. So the advantage of JSX is that adding JavaScript to a React Native component is simple. For instance, if you visit VS Code, you can see that several components are operational. JSX also lets you use a view element that includes text. You should be familiar with the HTML element used in web development if you've studied web development in the past. However, XML is functional here, thus HTML elements are not needed. JSX is used to process XML. The file is actually called app.js because it was originally built in JavaScript, but renaming it to app.jsx will make it function properly now. Okay, so as just the file's file type or extension has changed, it will function properly. The output result will not change if the file type is changed. Through Babel, JavaScript is functional in JSX. So copy the app.js file's view element. Now open the Babel website in your browser. Open the try it out tag. In this section, paste the view element or view tag. Now on the website, you can compare the two sets of codes to see how they would seem if they were used directly in native code versus JavaScript. So it seems like a challenging process. Okay, so this procedure basically ensures that HTML components are properly handled by JSX. It was mentioned at the beginning of the lecture that JSX is similar to JavaScript XML. It denotes the addition of XML to JavaScript. However, if you read the JSX introduction and visit the React website, you won't see XML in its description. You may learn from the definition that JSX is a syntax addition to JavaScript. You may now close a tag by using / the forward arrow, like XML if it's empty by searching for XML. Yeah, so this outcome provides information on XML elements. Now, if you type JSX stands for into the search engine, you will discover that JSX stands for JavaScript XML. So JSX enables HTML availability to use in React. In React, JSX makes it simpler to write and add HTML. In essence, it's used to add HTML elements, and as a result, the fundamental interview question for JSX is how the code used in the app.js file actually works. So on the back end, the JavaScript code is really complex. And yeah, so basically in this lecture, we explored the fundamental idea behind JSX. So that's pretty much it for now. Let's move on to the next lecture. Hello and welcome to this next part of the course on how to use events. In this session, we'll cover how to call an event using a button. The topic discussed in a prior lecture focused on the view and text elements. The button was not introduced. Okay, so let's first take a look at how to create a button. Every program depends on the view, text, and button elements. Without these three characteristics, a React Native app is worthless. So let's make a button now. Importing the button from React Native into the app.js file is the first step in creating the button. Use the button tag after importing the button. Keep in mind that the button's first letter needs to be capitalized to prevent errors. Both button tags and the slash character, i.e. button, between, like the forward arrow and the backward arrow, so button, can be used to construct buttons. So it's just, this tag that you need. So the primary skill you need to develop for yourself is to become a successful programmer. If you want to become a successful programmer, then what you need is error reading. You need to identify errors. You can tell your talents are not fully polished if you are not strong at error reading and deciphering. Okay, so you'll now notice the error. The title prop of button must be a string in the program. So it implies that you must include a string in a button if you want to construct one. You cannot leave the button empty. When you go to the button tag and give it the title, press here and save the project. The button will now be created in the browser. And so as you can see, the button's default color is blue, but you can change it to any other color if necessary. To use a different color, simply specify it in the button tag. Okay, so for the time being, if you specify red in the button tag and save the file, the button will be created in the program with the color red. Let's now declare the event. So in order to check the functionality, the event needs a name. To learn the event, follow the steps that require for a button to be clicked before a specific action is carried out. So let's now begin with fundamental functions. Alright, now let's use the arrow function, declare a variable const in the app.js file, and use console.warn brackets my first app in the arrow function. The reason we are using warn is now under dispute. You should use the warn element if you wish to check anything in the notification section. Additionally, the console's operation in the application will be covered. Now call the variable a and use the keyword onEpress in the button tag. As soon as you save the file, you will be able to use the console's my first app name. Go to the app.js file if you want to add any value by default, or if you want to access the console dynamically. Alright, so use the parameter value in a const variable. Use the parameter when calling the console as well. Now, if you save the code, you will notice that the application's console is undefined, since the value for the onEpress keyword has not been provided. Give the onEpress keyword a value of 450 for the time being. Save the file and you should see 450 printed in the console. One thing is now clear. The console functions whether or not the button is pressed. So call the function appropriately to fix this problem. Use the brackets and the arrow function in the onEpress keyword to properly call the function. Now that the keyword is used, saving the file will have no effect because nothing will appear in the application. When you press the button, the console will activate and 450 will appear in a pop-up window. This is how events are used. So events will also be used to navigate between pages. This was the fundamental lecture on events and how to use press events in React Native. If you want to produce data dynamically, it's not really covered in this presentation. So you need to understand some events in order to produce some data dynamically. And this lecture was basically about the fundamental events. Alright, so let's move on to the next lecture. Hello and welcome to this new lecture on hooks. In the last lecture we covered what different events are and how to use them. In this presentation, we'll discuss how to use the events, but this time with a dynamic operation system. Hooks are necessary if you want to produce data dynamically through events. Although there are many hooks in React Native, most are used at the beginner level and rely on states and props. So let's talk about using state first. Data updating or dynamic use is the primary task when using state. Although the data from the function was also used when working with React, you should use React ideas. Actually, React may appropriately use these JavaScript principles to obtain data of any kind. To use state, you should first import state if you want to use it. To grasp the concept of hooks, you can now comment out the const variable and remove the onPress event. So create a variable now, call it array, and add useState. UseState brackets can either be left empty or can automatically add values. After calling user in the array, which will return the value you immediately obtained from the user, you will then call it setUser. When you update the value of the user, setUser will be applied. Now, create the function that will update the state and use it. Okay, so use setUser after invoking the method, Carlos. As there is now no value in useState by default, nothing will be called in the application if you save the file. By using strings, indicate that the name Joe is in use. Now, after deleting the meta brains, call the user in the text element. Now, if you save the file, you will notice that the application prints Joe as the user's name by default. You now want Carlos to print in the program instead of Joe when you click on the button, triggering the event. To achieve this, you must use a key press in the button tag and invoke the function name. Save the file now, then open the browser and push the press here button. The name will instantly change from Joe to Carlos when you press the button. Therefore, this was just a straightforward React Native hook that allowed for dynamic data updating. Now, if you declare a second variable with the name letData and give it the name Sam, you can call it with a different name in a function. For example, data equals Peter. Okay, so save the file now, then launch the program. You want the Joe and Sam to change into Carlos and Peter when you click the buttons. However, when you click the name of the button, Joe will convert into Carlos automatically. However, because user is already set in a useState hook and data is not used in a useState hook, the name Sam won't change to Peter. The question before us now is the following. So can you use the useState hook in other components? This basically refers to whether it will work if you set the user's data in the app.js file and use the event in another component. Alright, so using state hook, which can only change data within a component, is the solution because it will not function in another component. As a result, this was the fundamental lecture in which the useState notion was completely explained. I hope you liked it and you understood the concept better. Okay, so any concepts that are missing will be covered in subsequent lectures, don't worry about it. But for now, that's pretty much it for this one, so let's move on. Hello and welcome to this new lecture on props data. In the previous lesson, we went over how to use state, which is an event available in React Native. Okay, so a new React Native hook related to props will be covered in this session. Props refers to the method used to transfer data from one component to another. As you are aware, state hooks are only useful for changing data dynamically within a single component. If you wish to modify data dynamically between different components, you should use props. Prop use can also affect your state. So this idea will be covered later in this session. Alright, so create a distinct component first different components were made for the screen, but for the time being, make a separate component within the app.js file to work swiftly. In the app.js file, copy the code and paste it once more. Write the second component in the text element so that you can identify the first and second components. Remove the state hook for now. Remove the function and variable as well because they are not required. Declare a variable with the name props component and the type const. Save the file after adding the props component tag underneath the button tag. Now, if you open an application, you'll notice that the screen has been divided into two sections. To function properly, you must remove the style in order to grasp the idea. Align the elements, take the flex out, and save the file. Now you can see that each component in the program is printed separately. Go to View Element now, then select Writing Styles, .second instead of fashions.container. The style function will now be copied and pasted below. Alright, change the container for the second and select the colors red and blue for the backdrop. Save the file now, then open the application to observe that the components are printed in various colors. The backdrop should be green because blue does not seem to be a good choice. The size of the component will increase in the application when you make it 100 units high. Okay, so here two separate elements are at work. In this session, we'll cover how to add events to these components. Let's try parsing data via props right away from one component to another. First off, declare a let variable with the name new data and give it the name Josh. Add new data below in the tags as well as receiving new data. Now go to the const variable props component and enter props in brackets since you are using props to get the value of the new data in the second component. Now change the text element from second component to props.newData. This means that the value you obtain from new data will be sent to another component via props. Now that the file has been saved, you can see that the code is operating correctly. Now, if you want the data to be altered automatically when you hit a button, you can, because you are currently providing data in a dynamic manner. Hooks will be necessary if you want to alter data through an event. Alright, so go to app.js file, declare a variable using the array const, and then add set new data to the const element. Remove the let variable now. Okay, so let's now transmit some data through an event. Create a new button for this purpose with the name change component data. Color it in gray and save the document. Go to the application now and you'll see that the button with the gray background has been added. Go to onPress keyword now. Use the arrow function. Set new data and pass the string with the name trumping name. Okay, Peter is also used by default in the useState hook. Now, if you go to the application, you can notice that Peter is printed there by default. The name will now be changed automatically from Peter to Trump if you click the alter component data button. Alright, now, if you click the press here button, Joe and Sam will be turned into Carlos and Peter, respectively. Okay, so in this way, you can transmit data through props. So if you recall from the previous lesson, it was mentioned how using state hooks prevents data from being passed from one component to another. However, you can use the props hook to transmit data from one component to another. And yeah, so that's basically it. With this approach, you may transmit data through props from one component to another. Alright, so that's it for this lecture. Thank you very much for watching and see you soon in the next one. Hello and welcome to the next part of our course on React Native. Even if you employ the most sophisticated programming, logic, and technology available, your application will be useless if the user interface, UI, is poor. The user interface is what draws the customer to an app. So the easier it is to understand and manipulate, the more attractive it will be for a client. Users will choose to use an app if they have a positive opinion of the user interface and if their experience is comfortable. The user will not use the program or may uninstall it if the user experience or user interface is tedious or outdated. This remark is crucial, as in today's lecture we'll be addressing the many ways of styling an application and therefore making it more user-friendly. We'll be looking at simple ways of styling an app, so it will be enough for now, and further on, as you improve, you'll be able to look into more advanced styling options. If pure styling is covered, the new lecture will become too long and tiresome. Thus, let's study some logic and styling. The primary idea at the moment is how to build a simple app with a simple interface. On a more advanced level, advanced topics will be explored, but for beginners, fundamental ideas are more than sufficient. Okay. As you can see, the component is already generated in the application. Simple color, background color, and height are the only stylistic elements present in this component. The only styling related topics that has been discussed so far is different color options, heights, and breadths of elements. As you can see in front of you, the program has many generated components that operate in various ways. When a new piece of data, like Peter, is printed in an application, you have three options for styling: internal styling, inline styling, and external styling. You'll be using internal styling when styling an element that is used within a component. You can style simply without using any curly brackets if you want to use internal styling. Save the file using font size 50 for the time being. Now, if you launch the application, Peter will be printed at a larger size. To make the font larger, modify the font size option. Using a comma in curly brackets and the color gray, you can easily modify the color. Save the file for now, then open the application to see Peter printed in a larger gray color. Okay, now, because text styling and styling view operate in different ways, changing the background of basic text is not possible. Text is only used to display the elements. View is the entire div. You must go to text if you want to alter the backdrop. Okay, let's now examine how to employ both external and inline styling. For this example, you must work on the second component. Green is the second component, which is active in the background. So, go to the view tag and modify the view style component. Now, use inline CSS in this array. After placing a comma, add background color in curly brackets, and then choose the hot pink color if you want to use both internal and inline CSS. If you save the file right now, you'll notice that the background color has been changed from green to hot pink. Now, as you may have noticed, internal CSS is also used, although inline CSS is still functional. Okay, so inline styling will always function, basically. If you apply three different types of styling to a single component, inline CSS styling will be chosen first. If you do not use inline CSS, internal CSS will be used. And finally, CSS from an external file will be chosen. So, this is a straightforward explanation of how to use CSS. The creation of the external file and the discussion of how to include CSS in the external file will follow. Because the main app component and the two props components are handled in the app.js file, an external file will be used. Since everything gets modeled together, logic construction and style are also done in the same file. Okay, so everything will be created independently to avoid this problem. Alright, so when you work professionally, you must design individual components. Two components are constructed in the same way, simply for educational purposes here, as you can see in front of you. Cut. I'm gonna repeat this part. I'm not sure if we see it in front of us. Cut. Okay, so two components are constructed in the same way, simply for educational purposes in this case. However, you can construct components in the same location if you wish to create a little component in the same file. We've already covered how to use data and link up components. Therefore, the fundamentals of styling have been explained, and I really hope that you now have a good grasp of them. Okay, so the creation of external files will be covered in a future lecture, but for now, that's pretty much it. So without further ado, let's move on. Hello and welcome to this new lecture on external styling. In the first lecture discussing styling, we covered how to use different styles. We also studied how to combine the use of internal and CSS styling. We'll now be addressing how to employ styling externally. To begin, create a file called style.js. We'll be using this file throughout our example. So go to the style.js file and paste the internal styling code that was previously cut from the app.js file. As soon as you save the file, the program will complain that the property styles are missing. The entire internal styling process will fail. Alright, so importing a style sheet into the style.js file will fix the problem. Additionally, specify the component form and write export default styles. Keep in mind that the first letter of every component you build must be capitalized to prevent errors. The S in styles should be in capital letters. It should be a capital S. Okay, so CSS is now developed. I apologize for using the phrase CSS, but it's necessary when talking about web development. You should now take the time to import new styles into the app.js file. You'll be able to use those components when styling your app according to your personal taste. Okay, so the application is still displaying errors. The style sheet is broken. Oh, what's happening? So the mistake will be fixed and the style sheet will function properly, as you can see. It seems that the error is coming from the formatting of the S. So we'll change them to capital letters. Now, if you go to the style sheet, change the height of the second component from 100 to 200, save the file, and then open the application, you'll notice that the application has increased the height of the second component. You can see that by following this process, you can use external CSS. Now, if you want to use CSS everywhere by default, what should you do? So let's say you want to bolden the font wherever you want to text class. Okay, so apply the name of the style sheet, add the location where you wish to apply the external CSS to style the page. If you look at the text element in the app.js file, it actually comes from the style sheet. Hence, this way is also accurate. The issue linked to using styles happened because the tiny s was used everywhere for styles and capitals were used while importing the style sheet. Therefore, the case of the letters needs to be the same everywhere, otherwise errors will arise. The problem will also be fixed if you capitalize every word in styles. Now that the second component's size has been increased and the style sheet is functioning properly, changing the height of the second component to 500, saving the file and opening the program will demonstrate that the code is running well. Therefore, you may use inline, internal, and external CSS with this technique. CSS's fundamental ideas have already been covered. Future lectures will cover fundamental styling, including how to style application components. But for now, that's pretty much it. So thank you very much for watching, and see you soon in the next lecture. Hello and welcome to this new lecture on margin and padding. To examine both files simultaneously, the styling and app components have been separated in the VS Code editor. Splitting will be required, since failing to do so will result in additional time being spent repeatedly switching from one file to another, making it difficult to continue working smoothly. Alright, let's now examine basic styling techniques. So styling is required because there is little distinction between components when the program is opened. It indicates that there is no text layout, padding, or margin. Only colors are used to distinguish components. Okay, so let's start with styling as it applies to typefaces. Go to the second component's styling to see where the text is used. You are aware that a bold font weight makes an element bold, but it also makes the edges and other parts of the element heavy. Now, if you align the text, it will by default be printed on the upper left side of the application. As you can see, Peter is printed on the left side of the screen, but we want to put it in the middle. So to change this layout, go to the second component's styling and use text align and specify center. Then save the file and open the application. You should notice that the second component is printed in the center, but Peter is not. So what happened here is that the second component is functioning, since props are being used while Peter is simply using inline styling. Now, if you want to add external styling, go to the second component's text element, use an array, and add styles.text in the array, followed by a comma. Peter is now printed in bold characters in the program and is center aligned, as you can observe when saving the file and opening it. By default, text is positioned horizontally, but if you like, you can align the text vertically as well. However, the property is currently not functioning properly, so ignore Peter's vertical alignment for the time being. Now go to the div's main content and center it along with any justified elements. Then save the file. Now that the code is operating correctly, you won't need line items if you go to the application. To print text horizontally in the application's center, use text align center. You can observe that text is produced on the application's left side. If you remove the text alignment from the center and then open the application. If you delete justifying content, you won't be able to tell the components apart clearly. Justifying content functions vertically, okay? Although there are other ways to align the content, this one is the easiest. Beginners might initially have trouble with centering text, but this procedure will also work on the first property. Beginners might initially have trouble with centering text. And yeah, as you can see, this procedure will also work on the first property, so you may try it there as well. The concept of creating a div and centering it has now been covered. After that, the fundamentals of padding and margin will be discussed. Let's now talk about padding and margin usage. In reality, margin refers to both the space outside of divs and the space between divs. Padding is found in any div's side section. If you consider a div to be a box, the padding and margin refer to the inside and outside of the box, respectively. Currently, all items are printed together in the app, but if you add a margin, they will mix up and become confusing. Okay, so command the text, view, and button tags in order to improve understanding. And as a result, when the source code is released, everything will become clear once you've removed the comments from the codes and you're able to see how they function. Also add data props. Comment out styling in the style.js file now. If you save the file now and open the application, you will notice that it's now empty. Create a view element in the app.js file by going there, then use the text element to write the first box there. The same process is repeated until 4 boxes are created. Now, style the first text element inline. Use phrases to choose a style and the color green. When you save the file and open the application, you will find that the first box is operational. Give a margin of 20 units to the first box, text, tag, and save the document. Now, if you open the application, you can notice that the first box now occupies a larger area than it did previously. You will want to save the file every time you change a component to make sure your editing is applied. Add a background color to check that the property is functioning correctly. And as soon as you set the margin to 0, after applying the background color, you can see that the first box's space is still covered by the green background. Give a height of 100 units as well at this point to observe the entire process in action. Now that the box has been constructed, you can view the box in front of you. Next, add margin and padding to this box to evaluate where margins and padding are effective. The navigation bar's view is currently hidden. You should put the first box below the navigation bar to prevent material from being mixed up. As you can see, so if you unhide the view from above, so this is what happens. For this, select style, give top margin, and give it a value of 10 units. Save the file now, and when you open the application, you'll notice that the first box is positioned slightly below the navigation. The first box won't leave space above for a navigation bar if you select a margin top of 30 units and save the template. Now, if you select the top 40 pixel margin, there will be enough space for the navigation bar. Since using the navigation bar alongside the component will result in a poor user experience, you must provide enough room for both components. Some phones have a blank screen or icons in place of the menu, which prevents your content from displaying correctly. In order to launch the components from the main screen, leave some screen space for the navigation section. When working on an emulator, you can access all different versions and test your app on any phone to ensure that it works properly. Up until now, the topic of discussion was margins. As you're already aware that padding refers to the interior of the box and margin to its exterior, let's now discuss the idea of padding. So if you specify left padding and give it a value of 50, save the file, then open the application, you will see that the material is arranged from left to right. If you wish to add extra space, padding will function as intended when you follow those steps. The content will be printed in the middle of the box if you provide left padding of 150 and save the file. There are numerous possibilities for paddings, including padding at the bottom, the left, the top, and the right sides of the box. Therefore, you can add any kind of cushioning based on your needs and preferences. As of right now, top padding has a value of 10. Thus, the first box has moved a little bit down. If you use top padding, the content will be positioned from top to bottom according to that number. To print the content in the box's center, select top padding 40, left padding 10, and top padding 40. Now duplicate the styling and paste it into each additional box. when you save the file and open the application, you will see that all the boxes have been correctly disposed on the screen. Additionally, you can see that there is a space between each of these boxes, since style takes advantage of the top margin. The space between the boxes has been removed, but they are now all mixed up if you remove the top edge from the boxes and save the file. Okay, use the bottom 10 pixels of the margin to see the boxes separately. When you save the file and open the application, you will see that the two boxes have been divided. As a result, you may create divs and use padding and margin appropriately. Use a bottom margin of 10 in each box and then save the document. Now, if you go to the application, you can see that each box was produced separately and that you can clearly tell them apart, because it's essential to understand all the fundamental principles relating to margins and padding. The lecture on padding and margin is quite long, so these concepts will work properly in web development if you put them into practice. Because of this, it's well known that web developers can work with React Native quite easily, and vice versa. If you use Flutter in another pure programming language, the styling of the components will be different. If you design websites using React, the working environment is React-based. So the only difference between web development and app development is the syntax. Otherwise, the same ideas will apply. Okay, so thank you very much for watching, and see you soon in the next lecture. Hello and welcome to this new part of the course on navigation. Any application needs to have a navigation component. When you wish to jump from one screen to another and display screens, you must use navigation. The focus of this lecture is theoretical knowledge, and only the theoretical aspects of navigation will be covered. In the following lectures, we'll explore how it works. So we'll see how navigation works in a more practical way. And you will also get to see it in action. But for now, let's just focus on the basics and the theory. You will refer to it as a navigation if you're beginning in React Native. You will notice the option of routing if you navigate the web using React.js, but for the time being, the term React Native will be used because you are working in it. Okay, so jumping from one screen to another is the basic goal of navigation. In this lecture, navigational methods will also be covered. Let's look at a navigation example now. As you can see, 3 screens with the names screen 1, 2, and 3 have been created. Now that you have clicked on the login form, you want to be taken to the home page if you've already signed up. If not, you want to be taken to the sign up form when you click on the login form. And then at the end, you want to be taken to the home page. In summary, you either want to go from screen 1 directly to screen 3, or for a different pathway. You want to go, from screen 1 through screen 2 and finally access screen 3. So to accomplish all these tasks, you should use navigation. There are 3 different methods of navigation: stack, drawer, and tab. The stack navigation example serves as the first illustration of hopping between screens. To view an example of drawer navigation, check out the Gmail program. Drawer navigation is the term used when the side navigation bar is opened by pressing a button. You should also be familiar with drawers, which are objects that transform into drawers when pulled outward. Drawer navigation refers to the software program in which navigation operates similarly to a drawer. The third navigation option is tab navigation, which you can learn more about with an example from Expo Go. You may have noticed in Facebook that clicking on the Home tab took you to the home screen, but clicking on other tabs sent you to the screen for that particular tab. By default, the Home tab is displayed on the screen. If you clicked the Setting tab, you will be taken there. Most often, these three methods of navigation are used in programs. You can combine all three of them or use each one independently. You can choose to rely on just one navigation type. Okay, so all forms of navigation are employed in some applications, like in a way or another. You must display the navigation tab, stack navigation for button clicks, and drawer navigation to display numerous menus just for the content. Okay, so that's it for this lecture, and now on to the next one. Hello and welcome to this new lecture on stack navigation. This is the course's most significant lecture. We'll be covering how to use navigation. This new lecture will focus on stack navigation. Subsequent ones will cover drawer and tab navigations. Because the majority of apps on the market use stack navigation, you should first learn how to use it at the beginner's level, because pressing the button to hop to another screen entails moving from one screen to another. So go to the browser before beginning stack navigation, since you need to install certain NPM modules. Visit the browser and search for React navigation. Visit the native React website. There are options to try it out. Okay, so you can read the documentation if you want. Then go to the Getting Started page by clicking Read Documents. You only need to check the prerequisites that have been provided. Copy the npm installation command after that. Open a terminal in VS Code now. Run the cd myapp command. Then, after pasting the npm installation command, press the Enter key. It won't take much if npm is already installed, but it will take some time if you're installing navigating npm for the first time. So, you don't need to be concerned because the installation speed is determined by your internet connection and your operating system. So it might take some time, don't worry about it. After installing npm for navigation, reopen the browser and copy the command to install the Expo project's dependencies. Go back to the console and enter the paste command to install dependencies. This npm is currently installed. In case the first npm doesn't work, you now need to install a second npm package for the bare React Native project's additional requirements. Install this npm once more right now. Paste this command into the terminal. When you install these two scripts, they may occasionally begin functioning properly, but you should install all dependencies to be safe. Occasionally, errors can be discovered simply as a result of version changes. If you are using the iOS operating system, you must install npx for iOS after completing all installations. Installing npm and its dependencies isn't necessary if you use a Windows operating system. You can see the interface and navigation container by scrolling down in the Getting Started page, which will demonstrate how to use navigation. Additionally, this lecture will cover how to browse various screens. So reopen your browser and install the native Stack Navigator. You must install npm for Stack Navigation because you need to start Stack Navigation before you can use its installation. Different npms exist for every sort of navigations. Once all dependencies have been installed, quit the terminal and open a new browser tab. You will see that the browser also provides navigational sample sentences. Because you are working on stack navigation, you must start by importing a navigation container, and you need to develop a native Stack Navigator. So use the navigator container from the previous terminal and keep just the components after importing the stack navigation. One thing to keep in mind is that you must build a native stack navigator and declare a variable const, naming it stack. Otherwise, you won't be able to browse. First, copy both dependencies from the browser and paste them into the app.js file. Next, use the const stack and declare the creation of a native stack navigator. After returning from the const app function, use fragments, view tags in fragments, and text tags because you want to display text in the application. Therefore, the main focus will be on the issue of how to redirect or navigate components and other things before all these things are used. So, let's leave these view and text tags for the time being. Go back to the browser and paste the navigation container tags into the app.js file's fragments. You now need to identify the screens you want to use by giving them names. You have two choices for this in terms of action. One option is to create a component within the main component, but since there must be 5 to 6 components when working on an application, managing the components will become difficult. To avoid this, login and sign-up screen components were first created separately. Let's now display these screens in the main program. Okay, so because the code is not properly established and no routes are provided in the code, the application view is currently displaying errors. To fix this, import the screen components login file, go to the stack screen tag in the return function and enter the name login and login for the component. The next step after logging in should be to register, thus import the registration file from the screen component, use another stack screen tag right now and call the component signup as well. Since it's solely for show, any name is okay, but the component name needs to be accurate so you can easily find it when you are navigating your code. You can now notice that the login and signup screens are printed in the application when you save the file and open it. Because the text for the login screen is provided in the signup file, the application also prints the login screen. Although the signup text is included in the signup.js file, the application will not display it because you must create an event to access the signup screen. As a result of using stack navigation, when the event is called, you will be taken to the following screen. Although these screen components can be generated in the main terminal, they are professionally made independently. So create a button in the login.js file after importing all the necessary buttons. Use a button tag now with the text navigate to sign up as the title. Additionally, one press event with an arrow function and other props will be used. Add navigation now, then call it sign up inside of the navigate component. Now modify the const login variable with props, then save the code. The button navigate to sign up has now been generated in the browser, which can be seen if you save the file and then open the program. The sign up page will now open when you click on this button. You can return to the login page by clicking the arrow button as well. Now go to the login.js file, copy the button tag, and paste it in the signup.js file if you want to make a button for the signup page. Add properties to the const signup variable now. Additionally, import a button into signup.js. You will want to change the button's name so it's easier to differentiate. Delete the previous name and name it login for the button. Once the file has been saved, open the application and select the navigate to sign up option. A mistake will happen when you click the button, so change the button's title to navigate to login and fix the error. Save the file now, then launch the program. Okay, now the sign up page will open when you click navigate to sign up button. The login page will open when you click the navigate to login button. The main goal of this lesson was to teach you how to navigate from one page to another. Though you can alter the color and do another creative things when you are comfortable with navigating. But for now, that's pretty much it. So this basically was the fundamental lecture on the concept of stack navigation. We'll be looking at other types of navigation in the next couple of lectures. So for now, that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for watching and see you soon in the next one. Hello and welcome to this new lecture on stack navigation styling. In the last lecture, we covered how to establish navigation and carry out stack navigation between various components, i.e., how to go from one component to another component. Okay, so there are two pages, login and sign up, and you can quickly go between them. Let's now talk about how to style the navigation buttons. You can style navigation buttons in a basic, conventional manner, but you'll have to employ a different technique. You must style the stack screen tag and decide which styling will be used for the sign-up stack navigation and which styling will be used for the login stack navigation. Therefore, standard and fundamental styling cannot be applied to stack navigation. Okay. Go to the stack screen tag now and use the choice component and curly brackets there. Below the options component, write title equals users. This will allow you to modify the title component. When you open the application, an error will be signaled since you are using the is equal sign. Okay, so use the not equal indication to avoid mistakes. The not equal indication is the two vertical dots. Indicate title users in the title field to alter it. You can now see that the page name has changed to users when you save the file and open the application. Okay, now if you want to alter the color of the user's background, write header style, use brackets and use yellow for the background. You should now see that the user's background color has changed to yellow when you save the file and open the application. Now that you know how to change the background color of items in a stack, you can modify the text styling separately. Then, if you want to modify the font size, use brackets and a 20-point font size after changing the header title style. You can now observe that user's font size has increased when you save the file and open the application. Choose font size 30 and save the file. You can see that user's font size is larger than previously, although the change isn't very substantial. Now, if you click the navigate to sign up button, the login page's styling is not applied to the sign up page's header and font size. If you want to apply the same styling to the sign-up page, go to the app.js file, copy the option from the stack.screen tag, and put it in the stack.screen tag of the sign-up component. Changing the title to sign-up users, select a green background, font size 20, and the color red should be used for the text. Save the file now, then open the application and hit the sign-up button. The registration page will load. The styling is evident and the viewpoint has been completely altered. The sign-up and login pages now have distinct styling. As a result, you can style certain components differently. This shows, among other things, that you have as many options as you'd like when it comes to styling the home page and login pages. The page's standard styling has been covered in a previous video. Here were the fundamental ideas behind styling the various components used in stack navigation. Let's now improve our buttons and explain a little bit more as to how they can be used. In an application, pages are accessed by using the left and right arrows. The right arrow will take you to the next page, and the left arrow will take you to the previous page. Icons are not discussed, however, we'll cover how to use buttons. So click an option in the app.js file now. Use the header title. Alternatively, you may use props here. But we won't use them here. So use a straightforward arrow function before using an opening button tag. I can also use a non-press event, but I will use a button with the name of left. I'll comment this title. You can now see that a left button has been added to the login screen when you save the file and open the app. Copy the button, then paste it in the option to create a right button. Instead of renaming the header title to header title, name it header right and change the button title to right, then save the file. Now, if you browse to the program, you can see that left and right buttons were generated on the login screen. You can now add a press event to each of these buttons. These buttons can also be used for navigational purposes. There you have it, the fundamental new lecture on stack navigation styling. I hope you liked it. Thank you very much for watching, and see you soon in the next one. Hello and welcome to this new lecture on tab navigation. In the last lecture, we covered how to use stack navigation to simplify moving between components. We'll now look into tab navigation. After this lecture, you'll be able to use tab navigation instead of stack navigation. In earlier lectures, we talked about 3 different kinds of navigations. The second type of navigation is tab navigation. Installing type navigation's npm package and setting up style navigation are prerequisites for using type navigation. Comment native stack navigator functions, and stack navigator container for the time being. When you comment on all of the aforementioned items, the screen or application becomes black. Go to the browser now. React navigation should be opened. Go to the Read Documents button. The installation command for stack navigation is available. Don't use stack navigation because it has already been used in a previous lecture. The Open Guides option includes both tab and drawer navigation. Use the tab navigation first. The bottom tab navigator and the material top tab navigator are the 2 options available for tab navigation display. It means that you have a choice as to whether the tabs navigation is displayed at the top or bottom of the application. This talk will cover both approaches, so use the bottom navigator first. To install the bottom navigator, start by copying the command. Now launch VS Code and the terminal. Run the cd myapp command. Now paste the command into the terminal and run it. The bottom navigator installation has begun. Now, if you use your browser to scroll down the page, you can see that this is where the process of using the bottom navigation is detailed. However, other NPMs are not required, so you only need to install the one that comes pre-installed, npm. The npm is set up. Next, shut the terminal. Open the app.js file now. Then import the bottom type navigation. Next, add a button tab navigator and by copying and pasting a variable named const tab. Use the navigation container first. Whilst we were using the stack screen for stack navigation, for tab navigation it's better to use a tab screen. Now name the tab screen login and create a component that you will also name login. Now if you save the file, the application will encounter an error. Open the terminal and reload it to fix the issue. Refreshing the page should fix any problems with the code, so leave it alone. Restarting your Expo app may be necessary if the problem is still present after refreshing. You should now notice that the error has been fixed and the login page is operating correctly. Moving on, copy the tab screen tag and paste it once more in the tab navigator tabs if you want to create extra pages. Just type the component name and the sign-up name separately. Now that the browser is open, you can see that two screens have been created. Both the sign-up and login screens are present. Details are printed on the sign-up page. However, the login page does not print anything because it has not been updated. There are more parts and panels you can use, but right now only the login and sign-up screen are in use. Now, if you go to the application, you will see that the only symbol printed in the browser is a cross. However, icons need to be printed here. Icons will be used frequently in the future, but for now use the top navigation. Install npm for top navigation in the browser first, and npx for expo if you're using it, before using top navigation. If you are using Android Studio, you can use npm page viewer as well. You must execute a different command to install npm if you are using iOS. Okay, so install both npms. You just need to finish a quick procedure now. After that, copy the top navigation and put it into the variable. The bottom navigator then follows this command. If you save the file right now, you'll notice that the AA view starts at the top. You can now switch between pages by pressing a button or just moving the screen. Okay, so this was tab navigation, and you were able to see both top and bottom views to demonstrate how to use tab navigation from both angles. In the next lectures, we'll cover icons and how to use them. Icons on top are not currently necessary, however, you can use them if you choose to. The bottom of the page in the application will have icons basically. Okay, alright, so we're now at the end of this lecture. Thank you very much for watching and see you soon in the next one. Hello and welcome to this new lecture on icons. We've already covered how to add a tab bar at the top of an application page. For this lecture, we are going to keep the bottom tab navigator and delete the top tab navigator. So this is a pretty simple way. Both tab navigators can be used in the same way, and it has already been mentioned that you can place one at the top or at the bottom. Okay, now, if you go to the application, you will see that there are two screens available, a sign-in screen and a sign-up screen. The login and sign-up tabs each have a cross above them when you access the login page. However, we want there to be a symbol instead. The UI, so the interface basically, and user experience will improve once we introduce icons. To do this, you'll first need to install the npm package for the material icons or the native vector icons for React. So click the browser's native vector icons to React. Activate the npmjs.com page. Open the npm command now. You only need to install React Native npm install for it to be downloaded. After that, enter this command into the terminal. Always check that the desired installation location already has the desired program running. For instance, the React app will automatically open if you open a new terminal. But in this case, the My App project is operational. So first, run the command cd my app to open the project, and then install the npm modules you need. Once My App has been selected, paste the command that was copied from the browser, run the command now. The installation process will begin and take some time. After the installation is complete, open the app.js file and import the material icons. To import material icons, do not use brackets. Instead, just import them. So let's look at how the logos or icons will function in the application. The process for this option will be the same. So use brackets after creating the option, then add the tab bar icons, the color you wish to use in tiny brackets, and any other elements you want to add, including size. Okay, so an issue will occur if you save the file right away because color and size were not specified. So use the arrow function together with color and size to eliminate this issue. Use the material icon now. First, use the icon name home for the current state. Skip the material icon size for the time being. Save the file now, and then check to see if the material icon appears. On the login tab, you can see that a tiny home icon has been created in black above the login option. Okay, so go to the tab bar icon, choose the use size option, and then click use color. You can use any color right now, but for the purpose of this lecture, pick blue. As soon as you save the file and open the application, you will see that the home icon is displayed on the login tab in blue and is by default of average size. The home icon will be printed in an extremely small size if you remove the size specification. The size can also be increased. So the home icon is printed in enormous size on the application's login screen when you select size 40 and save the file. The color of the home icon is modifiable. So you can now select the color gray, save the file, and launch the application to view the gray printed home icon. Okay, so everything else has previously been mentioned in terms of like how you can alter them. Now open the GitHub page for the React Native vector icons in your browser if you want to use a different icon. Next, use the search bar to look up login related icons. There are many available login icons in the search results when you search for login. Additionally, it demonstrates that if you use the tag for material icons, simple line icons, in typo, etc., a specific icon relating to that tag will be displayed. So for the time being, copying and pasting n typo into choices won't work because the library of material icons is already installed. Okay, now if you replace the word home with the word login in the file, you will see that the login icon is printed above the login tab in the application. Now, if you replace the word home with the word login in the file, you will see that the login icon is printed above the login tab in the application. If you want to save the file, choose an icon that is 35 pixels wide rather than 40, as 40 is much larger. Now, duplicate this choice and paste it alongside the sign up. From now on, use the material icon called sign up. The sign up icon you used is not an acceptable icon name. Thus, if you save the file now and open the application, you will see that an error has happened because the icon for the sign up name does not exist in the library you are now using. This icon name is invalid. Okay, so now that you have the symbol, check to see if the name you are using is accurate before applying it. An earlier example would be the login icon. So sign up icons do not exist in a library, which is why the problem is happening. But login icons do exist in the library that you are currently using, which is why there isn't an error and the icon is functioning. Therefore, the question is, how will you know which items are in the library and which ones are not in the library? Simply copy the material icons and open your browser to find a variety of libraries, including Ant, Design, ntypo, Evil Icons, and more. These libraries can be used similarly to the material icons library. So press Ctrl if you want to access other icons for this purpose. All the website's material symbols will appear when you hit Ctrl F. Okay, currently you can use the call split icon. So copy the icon, replace the signup component signup with it, then save the document. Now, if you open a browser, you can see that the application's signup tabs called split icon is printed there. Any icon can be used by following this process. Any icon can be used by following this process. The error saying the icon name is invalid will occur if you use the icon name incorrectly, such as by using capital characters instead of small letters. or by forgetting to use punctuation. However, if you misspell call split icon in the library bug, an error will be generated. So visit the website mui.com to discover more icons if you want. Okay, so this is an official website where you can find a lot of icons basically. Visit the material icons page after the website has opened, and any icon that you choose to use is compatible with React Native. So just look for, sign up icons, for example. So search here, and you should notice that it's displaying quite a few sign up related icons in the results. So start off by using the lock open icon, copying and pasting the icon name into the material icons tab. Use a hyphen to separate the letters of lock open and make the letter O of open smaller, i.e. lock open. Now, when you save the file and open the browser, you will find that the application's sign up tab has a lock icon that is open. Considering this, you can use several icons by following this approach. The baseline of this lecture was to demonstrate how to use icons. Icons are vital in app development because they improve user experience significantly. Alright, so we just reached the end of this lecture. Thank you very much for watching, and see you soon in the next one. Hello and welcome to this new lecture on React Native, in which we'll learn about basic form. In the last lecture, we learned about icons and how to use them. In this one, we'll learn about inputs and how we can use them to develop simple forms. Following this, inputs will be created, hooks will be applied, and things will be done in accordance with the specifications. Start by visiting VS Code. Any modifications you make to the login form are only applied to that form. They are not immediately carried over to the sign-up form. Therefore, developing benefits that can manage completions individually is advantageous. It implies that you can appropriately keep things separated if you wish to. Okay, so first leave a remark on the registration button. Now import test into the app.js section in order to use text input. Use the closing text input tag after importing text input. Now enter username in the placeholder. Now if you save the file, you will notice that the application prints the user's name and displays a keypad. Then copy the text input and paste it again to create another placeholder with the name password, since the username and password will be obtained separately. Okay, input text tags for labels are also an option. Username and password are entered into the program. Let's now style the inputs. Style each input individually. So you need to work on styling input tags individually, otherwise it might become confusing and you might end up making mistakes. You can also use inline styling if you are doing some quick and easy styling, such as changing the font or color of any component. However, you should make a style sheet if you wish to perform more complex styling. Okay, so importing a style sheet is necessary before we can start styling. So use call styles and class styles from now on. Next, create a const styles variable and call it stylesheet.create. After that, style your text here using brackets. Use input first, then choose a red border color. Now, when you save the file and open it in a browser, you'll notice that the red color is not working because the border's width is not specified. Give the border a width of 5 pixels and save the file. Go to your browser now to see that the red border color is working as intended. Use padding to separate the username from the border. You can see that there is a decent amount of space between the text and border if you make the padding 10 pixels for the time being and save the file, okay? Now that the border is touching the input on the login screen, use margins to create a practical spacing between each input. If you want the second input to automatically receive the same styling, copy styles equals styles. input and paste it there before saving the file. Now, when you open a browser, you'll see that both inputs have the same styling. When the borders of two inputs are near one another, create a 10 pixel margin to leave enough space between the two components. Okay, additionally, you can alter the font size and background colors. For inputs, select a gray backdrop color. Any color can be used depending on your preference. So correct inputs are now being created. And now that you require an input for submission, you also require a button to send input data. Avoid using a button here, since in most cases you cannot design a button, even though you can make one with styling. Okay, so for this, import touchable opacity first, then apply touchable opacity. First, add the text click here to a touchable opacity tag. You should now notice that the click here text is printed in the browser when you save the file and open the application. Let's style it right now. So to use styles, copy the style class and paste it in the touchable opacity tag. Change the styles. Input to styles.button. Let's now style the button. So use brackets and bracket styling. Apply first a 150 pixels width, a 50 pixels height. Center the pieces. Select the gray background. Apply 10 pixels padding and the left 130 pixel margin. Use a specific color for the backdrop, such as DDD. Then save the file. You can now see that a click here button has been created in the application when you save the file and open it. The button is reachable and functional. So use 12 pixels padding instead of 10 pixels padding, which will improve the appearance. Okay, since we used hooks, we have a proper button. As was previously mentioned, hooks are needed to appropriately obtain data from dynamic components. Add the use state hook to the login.js file now. Now use an array, write username and set username in the variable const that you just declared. It implies that it will function properly if you add usernames. Alright, after you've done this, make the class use state. If you save the file, you'll initially experience a problem, but when you use it properly, the problem will be fixed. Okay, so use a different text component below touch opacity to write the text. For example, your username is : then use brackets to add the username. If you save the file, an error that shouldn't have happened will appear. Go to the first text input tag and use an unchanged text event for the moment. The cause of the error will be investigated later. So to enable text to change quickly while being written, we use unchanged events. Use text form, like for a single change text event in brackets. Use the set username text function in an arrow function now. The variable is declared outside of brackets, therefore the issue is still present. The variable should now be clipped and pasted inside brackets. The error will be fixed once you save the file. So now when you open a browser and type alpha, in the first input, the data will also be written below and a click here button will appear. The main goal of this operation was to ensure that the function would also operate when the button was pressed. Okay, so to submit data, use the press event. As one press event has already been mentioned, press events are not currently used because it's a unique event that hasn't been covered before. So we're explaining the unchanged text event for that exact reason. Okay, so we just reached the end of this lecture. Thank you very much for watching and see you soon in the next one.